Glendale, Arizona, the side of this season's Super Bowl, and things are not looking good for a three-peat of hometown teams playing in the big game. Arizona won 25-1 after starting the year 35-1. New Orleans better at 80-1, but they also started middle of the pack at 40-1. Welcome in our analyst, Douzable here. So again, Saints and Cardinals are underachieving this season. My question to you, first of all, is out of the two, which one's been more surprising to you?
I would have to say the Arizona Cardinals, because if you look, they gave Kyler Murray that big contract, and they did everything possible to bring every piece back so he could have some success on offense. Now, DeAndre Hopkins has missed the first 6 games. He comes back this week, but they brought back Zach Ertz. They brought back A.J. Green. They brought back James Conner. The offensive line was the same offensive line from last year. This is one of the best teams in the NFL to start the season last year. They started extremely slow on offense. 3 points, Tommy, in the first quarter through their first 6 games. That's all they scored in first quarters this year. I mean, I just don't get it. I don't know what's going on with Cliff Kingsbury and this offense, but the offense just has not gotten going. If you look at the Saints, though, I mean, they're not much better. This team has been led by its defense the last few years. They're giving up almost 27 points a game and only have 1 interception. So both of these teams have massively underachieved. Now, again, the Saints have dealt with a little bit more injury, especially on the offensive side. Their 2 top receivers have been out, but that's no excuse for how this defense has played. It's been a shell of itself.
Keeping it with the Saints, and as we take a look at most points allowed this season, they are the upper tier or lower tier, depending on where you're looking at. And again, their head coach, Dennis Allen, that's his calling card. So again, if you're on this team, how frustrating is that you've been known for defense and you're not going up to par so far?
It's very frustrating, and if you know Dennis Allen's team, he likes to bring that pressure and go man coverage on the outside. Now, Marshawn Lattimore's missed the last couple games, will miss tonight as well, but other guys have to step up. Bradley Roby, Paulson Adebo, these guys have to step up. I mean, the defensive line, I believe, has 13 sacks on the season, so they are creating havoc and getting back to the quarterback. And also, they like to bring DeMario Davis on blitzes as well. He had 2 sacks last week, so the defense is getting there. They're just not making enough plays. In the last 2 weeks alone, Tommy, both quarterbacks that have played against this Saints defense have thrown 3 touchdown passes. That's alarming for this defense.
Dennis Allen, of course, getting the second bite out of that head coaching apple. First go around with the Oakland Raiders, this time again now with the New Orleans Saints, 2-4. Cardinals also 2-4. Cliff Kingsbury, the hot seat getting a little bit hotter. And it's funny, Leger, because with the Cardinals and Cliff, it used to be their MO is get off to that hot start and then drizzle and fizzle down the end. They fizzled right off the bat.
It's the opposite.
Yeah, so you would hope so if you're a Cardinals fan. Why are things different? Why did they not get out of the gates hot this year?
My thing is, Tommy, what is the identity of this offense? It seems like Cliff Kingsbury runs plays and just hopes Kyler Murray can be Superman and make plays at the end. Now, I really like what he did last week in establishing the run. They really got, Benjamin going, and also Kyler Murray in the run game. Second play of the game, counter play for the quarterback. It gets an explosive for 40-plus yards. Did a really good job running the football, but just not enough RPO, not enough bootlegs to get Kyler Murray on the edge. And then tempo is the thing that I think they should use going forward, because this offense seems like to click and find some answers on offense when they go a little bit more tempo. Execution has been a big, major issue as well. Perfect example, last week they go for it on 4th down twice. Once in the first half, I believe it was 4th and 4. Kyler Murray's footwork is all over the place. He skips a ball to Randall Moore, turnover on downs. 4th and 2, they run a simple concept, scissor concept, with Hollywood Brown and Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz does a good job getting to the flat. Usually the receiver, on the slant route takes away the 2 defenders. You have a wide open pass to the flat. Both defenders from Seattle go with Zach Ertz. Hollywood Brown is wide open for a slant, but Kyler Murray comes off it too early and then runs out of the pocket when he didn't need to. He had a nice little pocket, then throws up a pass to A.J. Brown in triple coverage. Turnover on downs again. So execution and then just trying to find an identity on this offense. I like how they started last week running the football. I think they should do that today versus Saints as well.
All right. Reinforcements, though, are on the way in an all-pro in Nuke Hopkins, making his 22 debut after a 6-game suspension. Time for Stats That Matter, presented by Penske. When you gain the right transportation partner, your business gains ground. Again, taking a look at how they fared without their star wide receiver, and just sort of giving you a timeline for DeAndre Hopkins since the start of last season. Missing 3 games with a hamstring issue, returned for a couple, then missed the final 5 games with a torn MCL, and of course suspended for the first 6 games of this season for violating the league's performance-enhancing drugs policy. He returns. It'll be his first game action in quite a while. What type of DeAndre Hopkins can we expect tonight?
And that's the question, right? If they're expecting him to be the savior, that's the wrong mindset. DeAndre Hopkins hasn't played in a regular season football game since last year in December. Now, I know he was in training camp, but when you miss 6 weeks, it takes a while to get acclimated to playing football again. You can do all the running and lifting that you want, but football shape is totally different. And the only way to get in football shape is to actually play football. Now, I know at the press conference, he came out and he was like, I want my normal workload. But sometimes, coaches, you have to protect players from themselves. Because if DeAndre Hopkins goes out there and gets his normal workload, you worry about soft tissue injuries. Now you're worried about him being on the bench for a couple more weeks and you don't have your star receiver on the outside. So I honestly think he should be on a pitch count today. Rondale Moore is a guy they've really gotten going in the offense the last 2 weeks. And also Zach Ertz. I think they should lean on those two guys and sprinkle in DeAndre Hopkins. Because if you lose him to a soft tissue injury, now your season is really looking dull, and you look like you could potentially lose out on this division.
We'll look out for that tonight, of course, on Thursday Night Football, and we referenced all of the injuries, not only on the Cardinals side, but also on the Saints side. Take me through what prep is going to be like for the backup, for the practice squad guy that made it to the roster for this week, because that's a lot of star power, that's a lot of recognizable names, and that's also meaning there's going to be guys that need to step up.
And Tommy, that's why it's so important to make sure your roster has talent on it, because the NFL and football period is 100% injury rate. Somebody is going to go down. If you look at the Saints, both of their receivers are hurt. Rashid Shaheed had an end around for 40 yards and a touchdown last week, stepping up big. Also, Traquan Smith really stepped up big for them. Guys behind the starters, you have to be ready to come into these games and play big football. Eno Benjamin came in. Darrell Williams has already been ruled out for this game. We'll see about James Conner. The thing is, he didn't practice all week long, and it's a short week, which means it's usually walkthrough timing. So if he didn't practice all week long, it looks like he most likely won't play. So I think Eno Benjamin will come into the game and play as well. But that's why you have to have good depth, and that's why it's up to the GM and the scouts to make sure you have a comparable roster for when these injuries take place.
Just see a lot of offensive linemen now. That's going to be salivating for some
That's
guys
tough.
on the other side of the ball.
Yeah.
Short week, getting a chance to feast. And again, we talked about both quarterbacks not necessarily playing well in prime time. All right, let's prop it up right now. You've curated a few things for tonight. What do you like tonight? Who players do you want to back?
And I went back and forth. I know me and you talked off the camera. I was worried about this Rondale Moore prop. I was so high on it because
Robbie Anderson.
Yeah, he's gone over 47.5 receiving yards the last 2 weeks, but Robbie Anderson supposedly is going to have a small package for him. I still think Rondale Moore has got targeted at least 8 times the last 2 weeks. I think he goes over the 47.5 receiving yards. Alvin Kamara last week went over, the 62.5 yards rushing. Kenneth Walker III had a field day against this defense, went over 90 yards, averaged almost 6 yards a carry. I think Alvin Kamara goes over that. And honestly, I think he needs 30 touches for the Saints to have a chance in this game. Kyler Murray, last 2 weeks have gone over 33.5 rush yards. Last week, just on one play, on the counter quarterback play, went over 40 yards on that. So I think he goes over that. And Zach Ertz, Cliff Kingsbury has been adamant coming out and saying we need to get Zach Ertz the ball more. He's gone over 4.5 receptions the last 2 weeks. I think he does that today as well.
As for the game itself, a total in the low 40s, 43.5. It's also within a field goal with Arizona laying 2.5, which is basically home field respect. Which side are you going here?
I went back and forth on this, Tommy. I'm taking Arizona to cover the -2.5 simply because this is a short week for the New Orleans Saints, right? They have to travel all the way to the West Coast. Really throws off what you do throughout the week as far as your preparation and getting ready for the game. Arizona Cardinals get at home. It's still a short week, so the preparation is different, but you get to see all your massage therapists and everybody that you're routinely used to seeing. That's going to be tough for the New Orleans Saints. I think they just have too many injuries. You talk about their 2 top receivers being out, Andrews Pete being out. I just think it's too much. Also, Jameis Winston looks like he will be active but won't start. Andy Dalton gets to start again. I just think the Arizona Cardinals do it. I think Kyler Murray's legs come into fruition here. Rondale Moore gets involved. DeAndre Hopkins gets involved. And Eno Benjamin, I think, has a bounce-back game this week in the run game. I think the Cardinals win this game, and I like them to cover the -2.
All right, that's good news for those that are starting Kyler Murray in fantasy this week. Even though we've talked about, though, prime time, not necessarily great for quarterbacks. Give me one thought on the other side again. Andy Dalton, all signs are trending for him to start, and he has also struggled in scenarios like this one.
Yeah, I stated it earlier, Tommy. Honestly, Alvin Kamara needs 30 touches, whether it's running the football or catching the ball out of the backfield. Andy Dalton hasn't played bad. They just haven't been as explosive on offense. And it's hard to do that, right? When you got offensive line injuries, you also got your 2 top receivers being down. But Chris Olave coming back, I think, could be a big burst for this Saints offense. I just think there's too much firepower with the Cardinals on offense, especially with DeAndre Hopkins coming back, and then Randall Moore really starting to insert himself into this offense.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.